Another episode of Breaking Down IT with Steve. I am your host, Steve, with PDX Information Technology Services, and this is part 2 of Home Plate Youth. And again, we are joined by Dorian, who is the executive director.
Yep.
Boy, I am having a hard time with that word. Director of Home Plate Youth. And this is JC, who is the
Development coordinator.
I'll get it one of these days. So thank you again for joining us. And so this episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about technology. In episode 1, we talked about more of what Home Plate Youth is and how the organization serves the youth. And please listen in because it is very touching. And so this episode, we're going to talk about technology. And so how does technology play a role in the day-to-day operations and outreach efforts of Home Plate Youth?
Yeah, good question. I think like any nonprofit, technology is absolutely essential for our core basic business functions. I mean, from payroll to tracking grants, right? I think in order to move the resources that are needed to do direct service delivery, that takes a variety of different types of software. There's so many things I could talk about in day-to-day operations. And then outreach efforts as well. I mean, we have folks that meet one-on-one and provide career counseling, education services. I think both the technology that we need to offer, sit-down courses on site here in Drop-In, and also folks going out into the field and performing assessments on tablets, like outside, meeting people where they are. There are so many ways that technology plays a role. It's really diverse and varied. So there's a lot of ways we could answer this question. I think, core business operations as well as, tracking information, case notes, et cetera, from the frontline service perspective.
Yeah, going out in the field, having a tablet, so you're taking notes, information.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't want to jump ahead, so I may be answering the question already, but I think one of the biggest things too is we use technology to get in touch with the young people that we work with. I think in the day and age that we live in, I think it's super important for us to be able to send out information of like, here are the resources, here is how you can get in touch with an outreach worker. Youth will have access at libraries on the computers or have just, a phone that doesn't have service but can connect to Wi-Fi so that they can check.
Yes.
So most of the time we are interacting with young people through Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger, because all on the social media. But I think that's really important to note as well, that it is our main line of communication most of the time to folks. If not, being able to connect to Wi-Fi when they're at our drop-in centers is super important as well. If they're not at the library, they could be here doing their work.
I think part of our motto of meeting youth where they're at also includes in digital spaces. You mentioned social media. I mean, most of the people that we serve were born in the 2010s and 2000s.
Yeah.
I mean, these folks are completely technologically literate, and as part of meeting them where they are on their own terms is we need to speak that language. We need to use those same communication channels. So absolutely, we do a lot of one-on-one casework digitally in addition to our in-person meetings on Drop-In.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Facebooks, the TikToks.
Yes.
We are not on TikTok because that would be me doing it, and I don't think people want to see that. So, they're like, not again. But yeah, definitely the main social media channels we're on just for them. So
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. And yeah, you kind of answered this one a little bit. So are there any specific technologies or digital tools that have been particularly beneficial in supporting the youth you work with? And you mentioned the TikToks and the Instagrams and the Facebooks. And
yeah, I would also say folks who are in our education and employment program, we're working really hard to provide them with the right technology to be able to be successful, specifically in our education program. Nowadays, if you don't have an iPad or a laptop in school, like how are you going to do your homework?
No one's writing
Things like
papers
that.
by hand.
Nobody's doing cursive anymore. So it's just kind of, how can we set folks up for success with the funding that we have, with the restrictions that we have with that funding. I think that's also something when it comes to the technology space that we often have to think about, or our teams think about.
Yeah, digital literacy is very different than digital access.
Yeah.
We have really tech literate population that doesn't always have the resources and the means to get new devices, access internet regularly. So that is an ongoing challenge. Not so much the tech literacy, but ensuring that folks have a cellular connection, that folks have a device. As JC mentioned, we provide small grants oftentimes for folks in our education program to make sure that not only are they enrolled in school, but they can actually functionally attend school.
Mm-hmm. And that also includes, having Wi-Fi in their home to be able to access, all the things too. So I think we just really, things that, oftentimes I think folks take for granted when it comes to technology, I think is something that we've broken down quite a bit when working one-on-one with folks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I hear you about the kids need Wi-Fi in order to do everything. Mm-hmm. My daughter, she's at OSU, and they have kind of this general, all the buildings have Wi-Fi, but it's provided by the units, the owners. And she's like, Dad, the Wi-Fi's out again. Dad, the Wi-Fi's out again. Dad, the Wi-Fi's out again. Mm-hmm. And I'm like,
it disrupts everything.
It does.
Yeah.
Let's solve the problem. Mm-hmm. Let's fix this.
Yeah.
But yeah, having the ability to do that is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, looking ahead, how are any specific ways you envision technology playing an even greater role in furthering HomePlate's mission?
I think this goes back to some of our previous discussions on resource scarcity. I mean, we are in a time where grant resources are contracting, and we rely on a variety of different public funding in order to fulfill our mission. And so I am really deeply worried about our ability to continue to offer folks individual devices and technology, and to be able to support the folks who enroll in our programs, quite frankly. I think from the operational perspective, we really want to stay on top of things, especially when it comes to data privacy, when it comes to ensuring that the data we have is well protected, because these are very vulnerable populations of people, and we're in the business of people, and so making sure that we have strong systems and business operations in place is an absolute must, in addition to ensuring that we have the technology that makes our outreach workers effective.
I would also add to that as well, thinking of data privacy, we also have a donor base, and we want to make sure that we're being cautious with that information and making sure that their data is safe, so that we are also a trusted organization to give to. And so I think you've been very patient with me as I run through any technology issues. And so at least on the administrative side, it's huge for us to keep things up to date, make sure that we are putting them in the drive. Steve did reach out to me recently and was like, you have too many things on your desktop. And I'm like, sorry. So
we're busy bees.
Yeah, so it's just things like that I think are, critical to have, to make sure that we are continuing to move the work forward in a way that's organized, that's sustainable, and that keeps up with technology as well.
Yeah, I like to think that we're above average in keeping up with technology, but I think because we are a population-specific provider that serves young people, it behooves us even more to make sure that as an organization we're very tech literate.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I would say you're above average.
Yay, thank you.
Steve's approval is all we need.
Above average. I love that. So from your perspective at HomePlate Youth, what are some of the most significant technological shifts you've observed in recent years that have impacted your work or the lives of the young people you serve and staff?
I think, some of the learnings during the pandemic really underscored the need to be digitally connected, the ability to connect with people via video chat, the ability to connect with people immediately and keep up, even if it's just text messaging. we can't always expect that people are going to be able to come in physically for services, pandemic or otherwise. And I think just being accepting of the ways in which young people want to be communicated with and adjusting our strategies around what is the most comfortable for youth has been really important. I don't know if I would consider that like the most significant technological shift per se, but I think, again, our motto is meet youth where they're at. I'm always centering that. But with this population, for the people born in the 2010s, like,
they're on it.
It's if you were born after cell phones were created, it's really a no-brainer. Our staff are also tend to be a lot of Gen Z and millennials who are also very with it. So I don't know if we've shifted. I think we shifted early, actually. I think home plate was probably an early adopter of a lot of technology, just by nature of the population.
Yeah, 100%. I also say, like, internally, trying to better ways for staff to be able to be connected with one another was super important. I'm thinking of like a very small technological thing that I didn't know about and we recently got is this thing called the OWL. It's like something like that, because Zoom is so important. And we had board meetings that were virtual. We had staff meetings that were virtual. And I think just enhancing something that small that makes folks feel like they're still like in the room with everyone else. I think things like that have put us,
For folks who don't know, the OWL is a piece of technology that the camera will physically move to wherever the sound is coming from and also does panoramic view. So if you're doing hybrid meetings where some people are in person and some people are virtual, it's a lot less awkward for those that are joining in the virtual space. I think for anyone who's ever been on the virtual side of a hybrid meeting, sometimes it can feel isolating or like you don't get all of the audio or that you don't really know who said what. The OWL does a good job of providing you the full view and the audio is way better. So small things like that.
I think help with like accessibility for people who, have very dynamic work life things. I mean, I think a lot of staff, if you look around today, there aren't many people here because they're probably out and about, working with young people. And so sometimes they're completely across the county. And to be able to connect with the admin team here at home base, I think is so important and why we work so well together as an organization.
Actually, maybe that is the most significant technological shift is an improvement in hybrid meetings. Because even though we can gather in person, we have so many meetings out in community or with other nonprofit partners or with youth that folks are spread out. Like Washington County's geography is huge.
Right.
Having everybody commute back to Beaverton for in-person meetings just isn't possible. So even though it's safe, it's hybrid. The improvement of hybrid meeting technology has really made a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are some of the key considerations for nonprofit organizations like yours when it comes to choosing and implementing technological solutions?
Yeah, I think the answers to this one are probably kind of obvious. I think as a nonprofit, again, that tries to move resources to those farthest from opportunity, cost is a big one. Making sure that we can afford it. But at the same time, that can't be the only factor to consider. Again, working with vulnerable populations, we want to provide safety and security and really be good stewards of the data that we hold, considering we hold a lot of personal information. And so I would say that both cost and the functionality, security-wise, needing that peace of mind is also important.
I'd also say for, the administrative side and being a smaller organization where we have 24 staff members at the moment, so being able to have certain technology that's easy for other folks to use, if we have an outreach worker needing to pull some sort of data, like how can we make that not challenging or like make it so complicated that it takes like a 2 or 3 day training thing. We do not have time for that. So just finding platforms, apps or, databases that are easily accessible for staff, something that they can easily get trained on, and be used, even on the administrative side. It's like, what can we use so that our operations team works well with our finance team? I think a lot of the since we're so small, like compared to maybe other nonprofits, the ease of use between departments is also very important when thinking about oh, what platform are we going to go with? And I think that's really important.
People wear a lot of hats. We're still really scrappy.
Yeah.
We're really good at what we do, but there's only so many hours in a day. And so implementing any new piece of technology, what is the barrier to entry? What is the barrier to like getting core competency in that technology is something we consider before making any shifts.
And making sure we're not repetitive in the different databases or platforms we're using, like do we have a, task management one? Yes. Do we need another? No. I think like the overload so that slippery slope can happen sometimes, I think, with organizations, but we try not to do that.
Right tool for the right job.
Yes, exactly.
Correct. And nothing more.
And nothing more.
Yeah.
So, are there any innovative uses of technology in the nonprofit sector that you find particularly inspiring or impactful?
I have one. I really, really value work-life integration or work-life balance. The folks that we work with, most of the folks that we have on staff have some form of lived experience in relation to the people that we serve and also experience vicarious trauma with what they do every day. And so it's really important for folks to be able to shut off at the end of the day. So one thing that I like is we have a piece of software that makes sure that any personal communications with youth are not happening on people's personal cell phone numbers. It's a completely different software. You can silence it when your shift is over. Again, really creating a digital boundary between what is work and what is personal and what is life. Work life only happens on that work phone number. Personal life only happens on that personal phone number. And really providing the boundaries and also the cultural expectation of upholding those boundaries so that folks can radically rest, so folks can recover. I find myself telling staff frequently a borrowed phrase from a mentor of mine that it's a marathon, not a sprint. The work we do, is quite literally life-saving for a lot of the circumstances that we work in. And you need to be able to shut off at the end of the day. So that's a piece of technology that I think is really impactful in that way.
It's also great because then I don't have donors calling my personal numbers. So I also appreciate that. Yes. Yeah, I know. I definitely echo what Dorian says. I'm someone who could do this work 60 hours a week if I could, because there's always something to do and I'm passionate about the work.
Everyone cares.
Everybody cares
really
so
deeply.
much. And so I think having leadership that is, in support of, finding the technology, finding what will help staff actually step away and rest, I think is so critical in the work that we do. Not having it on your personal phone is so nice.
It is so nice.
So definitely like something that I've had to learn as well, because I am someone who likes to have everything on one phone. But I think just, having that, again, leadership be like, no, let's separate so you don't get burnt out. Yeah. So I would say that's the biggest one too for me.
No, absolutely. Because I have, so I use Uma, which is a phone service. And it's on my cell phone. It's on my computer. I have a desk phone. So, but my personal cell phone is my personal. I can just say, do not disturb on the business, and I'm out. And that's it.
Yes.
So that's very important to disconnect and take a few and just be like, okay, we're going to put this away for a minute and then come back.
Yeah. The organization could have decided to not do that. I mean, I feel like for at least administrative side, they could have been like, hey, if you need to just use your laptop to make the calls or things like that. So I'm really grateful that we also have like a physical phone for us to take out into the community and, do the things that we need to do. So it's
absolutely
huge.
So what advice would you give to another nonprofit who is looking to better leverage technology to achieve their mission?
Oh, this is about relationships all the way. I mean, I am not a terribly technologically savvy person, but I like to surround myself with the folks who have the expertise and ensure that those folks feel supported in their jobs. Yes, thank you, Steve. I think one thing that's important for me is not feeling stupid and asking the questions. Like technological, how do I put this? The work that we do is so important, and the people that we serve are so vulnerable that I need to set my ego aside and ask for help when I need it. In terms of advice to other nonprofits, I mean, better leverage technology, Like, my answer to this one actually has nothing to do with technology. It's about surrounding yourself with the people who have the expertise and who have good relationships with you, who can come to you when there's a problem on their own, and vice versa. Like, I want to be deeply accessible. I don't want to be scary. I want people to flag when there is even an inkling of a challenge before it arises. So I think my advice to other nonprofits is to create psychological safety for other people, and also, set your ego aside and be willing to learn and be educated by other people.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think this could take up so much more brain space, in the day that I already have a lot of brain space going in 50 different directions. And so I know when you should ask an expert, I think is kind of the number one thing. Like, I think that is so valuable regardless of, monetary things. I do think it is important to just leverage an expert who keeps track. I mean, I think I'm always surprised when you reach out and you're just like, hey, by the way, I saw this, in your thing. And I was like, okay, great. Because I wasn't even thinking about that using the files on my desktop as an example. I just save it to there first. I don't know. And so little things like that where I'm like, oh, thank you for checking in with me. It's not something that I needed to reach out first, And so I think that's really important when thinking of technology and things like that. And also when it comes to making decisions, I'm no tech expert, but it's like nice to be able to go to someone and say, here's what I think, and then you give feedback and say, here's actually my experience in this. That's so much easier. So nice.
Yeah.
Well, anything you'd like to, any final thoughts or anything that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I think gratitude. Again, I think that last question, I think relationships, accessibility, just thank you. Yeah, it's been a really positive experience working with you at Home Plate.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would say the same.
Many more years to come.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're
we just turned 20.
We gotta go 25.
25.
And 30.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you both for joining. And with that, we're going to wrap up this session of Breaking Down IT with Steve. Remember to like and follow, and we'll tune in next week.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Steve.